Hi everyone, thanks for logging in today. Similar to the last session, I will go through a quick snapshot on the recent government announcements last week, and then I'll go through the questions at the end, as Helen has indicated. So let's get started. The first slide, Helen. Yep. All right, so with the announcements last week, basically it's going to be extended for another 6 months until the 28th of March 2021. A two-tier payment rate will apply, and what's going to be key is the weekly hours in February is the indicator for that. And I'll come back to this. The next thing is also the decline of turnover for all the entities will be retested starting from the 28th of September. And it will be on a quarterly basis and also on your actual GST turnover. So whilst I'm using this terminology being quarterly basis and GST turnover, your lodgement frequency and your GST registration is irrelevant. What I mean there is if you are not registered for GST, you still can continue to get the JobKeeper subsidy if you tick the boxes for all the other stuff. It is more a terminology the government's using to kind of have some consistency in the applications of the test. Next slide, Helen. Okay, so firstly, what has not changed? So the definitions with regards to the eligible business participant and eligible employee, the definition is still the same. You will still be expected to pay the JobKeeper payments first, and then you'll get reimbursed by the government post the month end. The turnover percentages are still the same. It'll be 30% for most businesses, 50% for the bigger ones, and 15% for the not-for-profits. What has changed? So the current scheme it's a flat rate 1,500 per fortnight. With the new scheme that will commence on the 28th of September, it will be a two-payment tier structure. And what I mean there is the next slide. Thank you. So from 30th of March till 27th of September, it'll be 1,500 per fortnight. Come 28th of September till 3rd of January, if the employee falls on the top tier, they'll get 1,200. If they fall on the lower tier, they will get 750 per fortnight. From the 4th of January till the 28th of March, the ones that are on the top tier will get $1,000 per fortnight, and the lower tier will get $650 per fortnight. So the question is which employee is going to fall in? Next, thank you. So the categories of employees, so that will change. Current scheme, there's no distinction whether they're full-time, part-time, long-term casual, or even stood down, they get that flat rate of 1,500. But with the new scheme, it will be based on their average weekly work hours in February. Next slide. All right. So for example, here with an employee, if they worked in February, their weekly average hours was more than 20 hours, they'll be on the top tier. If you had a casual that worked once a week, then they're not going to meet that 20 hours, they'll be on the lower tier. Similarly, for those who are business participants receiving the JobKeeper for eligible business participant, sorry, I just start my video. Yeah. So for those eligible business participants, the key is going to be the actively engaged and how many hours were you actively engaged back in February. So if it was more than 20 hours, you will be on the top tier. If it was less than 20 hours, you're going to be on the lower tier. Obviously, this is going to be a challenge for those that don't have timesheet entries or some sort of proving that 20 hours. I'll come back to that. Next slide, Helen. Thank you. So with the decline in turnover, that's another thing that will change. The current scheme, you can use projected numbers as well as the actual numbers to do the comparison period to see if you met the decline of turnover. And as I mentioned in the last Q&As, there were 9 test periods that you could choose from, being the calendar month from March till September, or you could use the quarterly period for June 2020 or September 2020. But with the new extended scheme starting from the 28th of September, it is been narrowed and it'll be based on the actual GST turnover, and the test periods is going to be based on a quarterly basis. Thank you. So we've got an example here. So for the 28th of September till the 3rd of January, what you will need to meet the decline requirements is that you have to meet the 30%, for example, for most businesses, the decline needs to be met for the June quarter as well as the September quarter. Then only would you continue to get the JobKeeper subsidy in that December quarter period. So that 28th of September till 3rd of January. So for the bigger businesses and for the charities, it'll be that 15% and 50% decline. So if you were a monthly BAS lodger, this is an example where you just basically put your turnover for April, May, June, and total it up. So say June 2020 quarter, you had 170 grand. And then in 2019, your turnover was 600 grand. You had a decline of over 30%, being 72%. You do a similar exercise for September. So do July, August, September, and you compare the drop in turnover. And if in both periods you have met this decline of 30%, then you continue to be eligible. All right. From 4th of January till 28th of March, you need to be retested again for the decline in turnover. So you need to now meet 3 quarters, not just 2, 3. You need to do the June quarter, the September quarter, as well as the December quarter. So what you'll do is you'll do the June 2020 versus your June 2019 quarters total. So you need to compare the actual supplies, not projected, actual, and the similar, the September period, as well as the December period. Only then you will get the JobKeeper subsidy continuing for that March quarter. So from 4th January till 28th of March. Now, the announcements were made last week. So the legislation surrounding how this mechanism of how these updates are going to operate is still being drafted. So it's a wait and see end of things. But they have indicated that the ATO will have some discretion in the following areas. There will be alternative tests where a worker's hours were not usual during February 2020. Say, for example, they volunteered in the bushfire efforts, or they weren't employed for the full period, or they were on leave. So there will be indications of, well, what are our options? And I would think similarly for the business participants, for those who don't have timesheet entries to show that 20 hours, well, they will provide some sort of guidance on what type of substantiation would be required. There will also be guidance on where pay periods are non-weekly or non-fortnightly, how that's going to operate come 28th of September onwards. There will also be alternative tests for comparing actual GST turnovers for those respective quarters, where the comparative quarters in 2019 is not reflective. So probably for those businesses that are startup businesses, or if you had a restructure, various reasons, they will have the alternative tests, similar like what they have with the current scheme. There also indication that the commissioner will have discretion in extending some of the time to meet these conditions. So the next one, thank you. The question really comes down to, what do you do particularly with that first pay period in October, where September has just finished, the time frame to start paying out will be fairly quickly. So what do you do? Our recommendation at this point is, firstly, check your workers in their average hours back in February. Do they fall on the top tier or do they fall on the lower tier? Keep your cash book as much as possible processed up to date. And so when 28th of February, 28th of September comes along, you are ready to go to assess whether your quarter for September, how your decline of turnover is going to look like, and whether you will meet the requirements. So that was about the JobKeeper side of things. The other announcements that the government made was that the coronavirus supplements will be extended till 31st of December. Further, there will be a change. The payment will be reduced from $550 per fortnight to $250 per fortnight from 25th of September. The income-free area for those receiving job seeker payments and youth allowances will increase to $300 per fortnight. They have mentioned that the coronavirus supplement won't be counted towards this income-free area. And if you earn more than $300 per fortnight, the payment entitlement will reduce by 60 cents for every dollar above 300. The means testing, as well as the mutual obligation requirements for job seekers, will be back on. Early release of super with regards to the 10 grand. Previously, it was supposed to be stopped on the 24th of September, but they have extended it till 31st of December. The rent relief provisions have all the code of conduct for landlords and tenants that has also been extended to 28th of March 2021. The SME loan guarantee scheme that also has been extended till 30th June 2021. So basically they want workers to get back on the bandwagon of working if possible. So that's the snapshot of the announcements. I'll go through now some of the questions that have been posted to us to date. So first one, is the enrollment different to what I have already completed for the original JobKeeper? So as I mentioned, the legislation to accommodate the changes are still being finalized, but I would anticipate that if you meet the test requirements, you will just continue doing your monthly declarations and making your payment top-ups for the respective employees as required. There has been commentary earlier today that there might be a bit more disclosures that you might need to make ongoing as well. But again, once we know what the legislation looks like, we'll keep you posted on it. So those people who are thinking that you might comply for the June and September quarter, but you haven't already enrolled for the JobKeeper, you're still able to for the other 2 quarters as well, if you comply, obviously. All right, the next question was, how do I make sure my monthly declaration will comply? Where in my cash book do I find the most accurate information? So basically with the monthly declarations, the details that the ATU has previously indicated is they are happy if you relied on your BAS disclosures. With Xero, they have a Xero calculator that you can actually use. It's located in the report section in the cash book, and it looks like how I've got that little picture, and it will do the calculation for you. You just have to populate the period and which basis are you using, whether it's cash or accruals. MyJob, unfortunately, doesn't have a similar calculator. So instead, what we would suggest is run your BAS report for the relevant test period and check and see if you meet the decline by looking at the sales or revenue figure excluding GST totals. For those who are not registered for BASes, you can run your profit and loss statement for that period and do the check that way. Next question. How do I make sure my forecasting is accurate? So this is with regards to your monthly declaration. As the name suggests, forecasting, it's an estimate. As long as you're doing it on a reasonable basis and you keep your paperwork on what your assumptions were, you should be fine. So, I've had clients, different industries would have different ways of forecasting. And as I said, as long as you're doing it on a reasonable basis, you should be fine. The forecast numbers that the ATO is getting you to post on the ATO websites are just a data collection exercise. It is to measure the economic impacts and assist in future policy making. That's why they're collecting that data. It's not a retesting. I think, Helen, you want to say something?
Oh, no, no.
Sorry.
Carry on. I think
Right.
that's actually the end of the questions. I actually just
Yep.
wanted to say there's a couple of people that arrived during the webinar. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we are recording it. It's been quite a quick one. We're recording it and I can send out a recording to everyone so that then you can sit back and go through it again afterwards. But at the moment, has anyone got any questions, any specific questions that they wanted to ask Sham now? And we can open that up for questions now. I'll just give everyone a few seconds. If you've got any questions, just type them in. If not, you can email us and we can email everyone back the answers. And obviously, as I said, we will send out a recording of the webinar. At the moment, the government, obviously there's still, the legislation is still to be finalised. But based on what we found with the first lot of JobKeeper legislation, we can kind of guess a lot of what they're going to decide. Is that correct, Sham?
Yeah.
So it looks like there's not any questions. I think most people probably would have already gone through the first lot of JobKeeper, and it does look fairly straightforward. So what we can do is we can end the webinar now. It's been quite quick. It's only 20 minutes, but that's short and sweet. Oh, hang on. Anuska's, it's us here. Is the cash flow boost continuing?
So at this stage, they have indicated, they haven't indicated that is continuing. So it will end with the September period.
We haven't had anything about that one. It's just
No.
JobKeeper. So I think the key is what the government wants is for people to be employed and to keep the employment going. There might be some specific measures aimed at certain industries, but we haven't had any information about any cash flow boosts, no.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? All right. Well, shall we finish up here, Sham, do you think?
Yeah. Just, as the details come through, we will post out the updated, particularly with the hours stuff. If you've got any questions, feel free to give us a call. We're here to help.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks very much for attending. And I will email everyone with a link to a copy of the webinar just in case you want to rewatch it. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.